Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tom Herron with NFRC, and I'm your host for today's presentation. NFRC, of course, aims to provide the latest thinking in the fenestration and green building industries, along with insight about market trends that may be of interest to our stakeholders. So today's webinar is entitled Winds of Change, the Value Propositions and Market Opportunities for High Performance Windows. Our presenter is Rick Dunn, who is the Senior Manager for Emerging Technology at CalMTA, which is California's recently launched statewide market transformation administrator. Previously, Rick was the Senior Manager in charge of Building Envelope for the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance and also a co-lead for the Department of Energy's Partnership for Advanced Window Solutions, more commonly known as the PAWS initiative. If you have questions along the way, please type them into the Q&A box rather than the chat box. And finally, we are recording the webinar and we will post it on NFRC's website afterwards. So with that, I'm confident we will all learn a lot from each other today. So Rick, I'll hand it over to you to get us started.
Great. Okay, thanks, Tom. All right, well, appreciate everybody showing up today. This is an extended version of a presentation that was given at the NFRC fall meeting late last year. Let's see if I can minimize my video. So as Tom mentioned, formerly with the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, a lot of the work that I'll be talking about today was done while I was at NEA as the building envelope product manager, also through PAWS. So I just want to point out that I've changed organizations. I'm currently with CalMTA, as Tom mentioned, but really representing the Partnership for Advanced Window Solutions today. And when we talked at the NFRC meeting last fall, I kind of kicked that off as saying, you know, my goal here is to be a bit provocative. You know, the window industry is missing out, in my opinion, on a pretty significant opportunity that a lot of other industries are actively participating in, even aggressively participating in. I think there's a lot of outdated conventional wisdom that prevents the industry from engaging, or at least acts as a dissuader from participating. So the goal here is to dig deep into science and talk about go-to-market strategies specifically. Really want to identify the opportunities and leave it to companies to decide if they want to take advantage of those opportunities, but may do it in a way that's a little bit less than conventional. So fair warning there. Let's see. Okay. So real quick, Partnership for Advanced Window Solutions is, Tom said, a DOE collaborative to promote cost-effective, high-performance window solutions. PAWS addresses both residential and commercial, as well as new windows and secondary attachment products. We'll be talking today really about residential new windows more than anything else, but I may make reference to other related opportunities. Who is PAWS? Let's see if I can slide this out of the way so I can see my screen a little bit better. About 80 plus organizations currently. Actually, it's probably a little bit higher. It's fairly diverse, represents a broad range of market actors, leading energy efficiency organizations like NEA, NEEP, Minnesota CE, who's on here today and is also co-lead for PAWS, ACEEE. Leading electric and gas utilities and their implementers. Names folks may recognize: Energy Trust of Oregon, Nicor Gas, Energy Solutions, Puget Sound, National Grid. So pretty diverse participation from those providing power to their customers and also their supporters. Window and glass manufacturers, broad representation there as well. IGU manufacturers, as well as window manufacturers and trade groups serving the above, like FTI and NGA. And ratings organizations, NFRC, hosting here today, thank you, and AERC, which is the ratings organization for window attachment products, as well as EPA and Energy Star. So with that, I'm going to kind of get into what the opportunity is. There aren't a lot of slides. There's still, I don't expect to be a really long presentation. Hopefully some, plenty of time at the end for Q&A and follow up. But the goal here is to highlight opportunities for involvement from the window industry, why that will benefit the window industry, some examples of how to overcome, what in my opinion are, historical misperceptions or current misperceptions about historical headwinds for windows and energy efficiency. Highlight some case studies that validate, some of those theses, and then talk about the call to action, how window manufacturers, if they so choose, can start to take a more active role. When we were at NFRC in fall, it was right on the heels of a 2023 partners meeting from CE, the Consortium for Energy Efficiency. This was held in Denver, Colorado. Really, this is an example of one of several organizations that do this kind of work, working with industries, working with manufacturers to promote energy efficiency. So CE works with research organizations. They test and promote energy efficient products, support and participate in field pilots to highlight the energy efficiency impacts of emerging technologies or technologies that are more mature. We can make an argument for Windows there, but just really haven't been deployed in a way that maximizes their impacts on energy efficiency. The members of CE are investor-owned and municipal utilities, state energy offices, government agencies, non-utility program administrators, a lot of groups similar to the ones that we just went through as participants in pause. Manufacturers themselves are not members, but they are partners, and this is recapping a little bit from the partners meeting. And in that, CE invites representatives from those manufacturers, their distributors, software developers, others to bring insights to the table, and they use the meeting as a mechanism for recognizing the accomplishments of those manufacturers and other partners in driving efficient products into the market, highlighting not just the innovative technologies, but highlighting their participation in programs to deliver those technologies to market. So the point I really wanted to make here was at the CE meeting last fall, there were over 400 attendees. There was broad representation from HVAC, from heat pump manufacturers, from water heating manufacturers, A.O. Smith, Bradley White, other lighting manufacturers, both hardware, software, and controls, building controls, energy management systems, consumer appliances. All of these industries are sending their representatives. Not only are they participating with CE, but showing up at these meetings to highlight their partnerships and accomplishments together. At the time, I was still at NIA, still in charge of building envelope. And as I scoured all the attendees to find anybody from the window industry that I could chat with, I found precisely 0 participants from the window industry.
Hey, Rick.
So kind of interesting. Yes.
Hey, Rick, it's Tom. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we got a couple of messages letting us know that we weren't in presentation mode. So I was just wondering if you wanted to take a look at the slides to be sure we're in the right place.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's showing up as presentation mode on my screen, but and I don't have a split screen thing going here. Yeah, it's the preview is not presentation mode, but mine is showing up as presentation mode. So let's see what we can see if we can fix that. Tom, did it change from when we were previewing it as we came on? I'm wondering if we.
It looks the same to me, actually.
Okay. So, yeah, it's still, I can see the preview and the control panel showing the, just more of the editor notes and things like that, but it's not showing the presentation mode for some reason. Okay, well, let's see if we can work with what technology is giving us here. And maybe I can just close this out and make it bigger. I don't want to waste too much time.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I know you're not in your normal environment today, so that it did change.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still in that same, for some reason, on my computer's presentation. It's not for you, but hopefully it's visible, a little bit more visible now. little bit more readable, Tom?
It does look better. Thanks for making that adjustment.
Okay, sure. Apologies if that's not optimal for folks. We will be distributing the slides, and again, fortunately, there's not. This is not a slide-intensive talk. I think the discussion is probably more important. But yeah, key takeaway from this is broad participation from a wide range of manufacturers in different industries, working collaboratively with CEE on driving energy efficiency. There's a lot of federal dollars flowing into these programs. We can debate the merits of those federal programs. I know there's diverse political views and opinions on that funding, but the reality is there's an enormous amount of funding to support this type of work, and it's in my opinion just an incredible opportunity for the window industry to get more involved in these types of programs. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why to get involved, how to get involved, and what the messages can be. A big part of what PAWS is doing is promoting the discussion of why windows matter. And even, it's interesting, even within DOE offices, it's not always clear why windows matters. I think there's a lot of just historical knowledge that's become ingrained that hasn't kept up with the advancements in window technology. For example, when people think about triple pane windows, which was a big focus at NEA, part of our field studies on pilots, I'll talk about that in a minute. A big focus of what PAWS is looking at, even from experts in the industry, subject matter experts, people in DOE, builders, other organizations related to windows. We hear that triple pane windows are thick, they're heavy, they can't be used in retrofit applications, and potentially true for the circa 1990, early 2000 versions of those windows. This isn't a technology presentation. Everybody on this call knows vastly more than I do about the state of current technology, and that triple pane windows are no longer most of those things. So the idea that we can't be promoting the most efficient products that are available because of some of those limitations, just simply not true. And that doesn't mean that there aren't other headwinds for adopting more efficient windows, and that's what we will talk about today. But one of the things we wanted to overcome is in the discussions that I've had with building science people, with efficient homes people, even within DOE and other green building industries, is the idea that if you really want to improve the building envelope, the easiest and best thing to do is go after insulation. And Christine Williamson was a presenter at a conference also last year, the Build Right conference in Portable. She's a fairly well-known building science expert, has a YouTube channel. I don't spend a lot of time on YouTube, but I came across Christine at the conference and gave her a really compelling, relatively short 8-9 minute presentation there. This wasn't the exclusive focus of that discussion, but through that conversation, we got on the topic of why glazing matters so much more than insulation. There's a QR code here. Would invite folks that when you get the slides, check it out. It's 8 minutes of your time. You can also just go onto YouTube and go for Christine. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt again. Now people are not hearing you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you able to hear me okay?
I hear fine. Yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering. Yeah, I don't know what's on their end. I've got. I'm going to go ahead and turn off video just to help with the bandwidth in the hotel. But as long as you're hearing me, I wonder if other folks are having some challenges too. But definitely interrupt if you're not hearing me clearly.
Okay, it seems some can and some can't, so I don't know what to do with that. You might need to exit and rejoin is the recommendation I'm seeing. Not you, the attendees who can't hear. Of course, they can't hear me say that, so let me put it in chat.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've got it's a decent signal here. We're not doing too bad with the video off. It should certainly help. But as long as some of folks are hearing me, it's probably not exclusively on my end. So I'll go ahead and continue. But Robin, interrupt or flag me again if you think this is if you need me to shut down and restart or exit and re-enter. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So on the glazing, why the glazing matters so much more than insulation. This is an opportunity. We're going to talk about this in a Habitat for Humanity case study here in just a second, but I want to set the groundwork with the data science behind. Code has come so far with insulation that trying to go beyond code, and a lot of times that's what we're talking about, are some of these opportunities to achieve higher levels of energy efficiency, and what are the most economical pathways for builders, green builders, to achieve that. You get a lot of focus on insulation, and with the between the stud insulation having improved so much over time, having codes brought up the floor on what can and can't be used in those applications, it's getting to the point now where making significant improvements on envelope in efforts to meet higher energy performance standards requires going to exterior insulation, rigid foam installation. Great product, and I'm not here to say don't do that. What we're going to point out is that you have to make a really big step in insulation to have the same amount of impact that you have in making a relatively small increase in U value performance. And that's what this particular video goes into. Gets into the science of the R values of the insulation and R values of the windows that you can play with to achieve an overall envelope UA, and shows how products available today from the window industry, and we're not talking about vacuum insulated glazing. You don't even have to go to triple, although we'll talk a little bit about triple, but the much larger, disproportionately positive impact that relatively small changes in window U value can have for the overall envelope performance. And the reason for that is because that right now in most places, code for windows is relatively low. So it's not too hard and it's not too expensive, and particularly in new construction where there isn't incremental installation costs, to go from a code window to a 0.22 or a 0.20 window have a much bigger impact on the overall UA value of the envelope without a substantial increase in overall cost. So really interesting video and lays the science basis for the next slide, which is kind of wanted to test out this theory. Sounds good on paper. Does it actually work as well in a real world situation? This is a case study from the NIA high performance window field pilot, where we worked with builders. We started working with green builders. I'll have some editorial comments about that in a minute. And then worked our way up to volume builders, Habitat for Humanity being somewhat in the middle with the potential, obviously, for a big footprint. But starting with, oh, excuse me, just gonna let I saw something pop up in the chat. Nope, I'm gonna keep going. So this is a case study out of Bend, Redmond, Habitat for Humanity. Grace Weger is the Director of Development and Land Acquisition. So we approached Grace. She had a couple of projects going. They were attempting to build near net zero homes for low-income families in the Bend area. So first thing I want to point out is we're not talking about high-end, multi-million-dollar green building homes. These are low-income homes where cost of construction is everything. So we approached Grace, and in her attempt to reach near net zero, she was working with her energy rater, which was Earth Advantage, and said, hey, well, we want you to take a look at triple pane windows, or just high performance windows, but a preference for the triple pane windows. And when you look at your potential pathways to reach the energy performance level that you've selected, we're not going to select it for you. You've identified that you want to get to net zero or near net zero, where you can offset the difference with a little bit of solar. We want you to look at the multiple pathways to get there and make sure at least one of those pathways includes the triple pane window product. And early on, the energy rater, Earth Advantage, was kind of skeptical. Like, I don't know that that's gonna pencil out for you, but we're happy to go do it. I won't read through the details of the case study. Another QR code. It's a 3-minute read. I think it's well worth your time. But the short story was they looked at several options for that energy performance. 2 are listed here in the bottom right, and started to break out the financials for the way to get there. And to their surprise, the option that included triple pane windows was the most economical way to do it, far outperforming the rigid foam insulation approach. Not in terms of energy performance, right? That was fixed. There was going to be a certain level of energy performance achieved. but what was the most economical, least expensive way to get that? And it was with the new triple pane windows. And part of the reason for that is that the installation costs for the rigid foam installation are quite high. And the other aspect of the rigid foam, even if the cost was on par, is that the building technique is new to a lot of installers. And one of the things we learned throughout our engagement with both the green builders and the volume builders in the NEA pilot study was cost is certainly front of mind for them in terms of what they need to manage, but also risk. New building techniques often are not looked on favorably. Presents risk to procurement of materials, but often it's just, do you get the performance that you're expecting to get? So in this case, there's really no installation difference. And I don't think I have a link here to the NEA case study. I'm not sure if that's been published yet, looking at all the different builders that participated. But that overall perception that windows were more difficult to install was done away with. We interviewed multiple installers throughout that pilot program. Really no difference with a thin triple pane product compared to a typical double pane product. One installer installing most of these windows just as quickly, so no incremental labor costs. The only incremental cost would have been to go from whatever window was selected as the baseline choice, which in the case of Habitat for Humanity, I think was a 0.27 or 0.26 window, up to a triple pane 0.21 window. But because that offset the cost that they were looking at for rigid foam, what they ended up doing was actually saving about $8,000 per home. So same energy performance, $8,000 less expensive than the option that they thought they were going to pursue. And I do want to mention, NEA incentivized the purchase of those windows for this program for Habitat for Humanity. This does not take that into account. We didn't have to provide any dollars. If we had subsidized that, not at all, $0 to Habitat, they would have saved $8,000 on the construction of these homes. On top of that, NEA did provide a stipend, and the stipend only covered the incremental cost. We didn't pay for the entire window. We just said, go get a bid on what a 0.28 window is, go get a bid on what a triple pane 0.22 or 0.21 window is. We're going to cover the difference for you. I think the case study, I won't do it here because I'm not 100% sure. I believe the case study identifies the brand. It does, actually, it's listed here. It was Applied Gem triple pane window. I think what's notable about this is when we talk about cost for triple pane windows, a lot of the barriers that get articulated are too expensive, can't do it. The incremental cost for each window in this particular project was in the range of $35 to $40 per window for a typical, and you can see the windows in the picture. Typical 3x5 windows, so 15 square feet. We're talking between $2 and $3 per square foot more for a higher performing triple pane window compared to the double pane version. So a big step up in performance energy wise. Noise reduction was also something not that we were targeting, but was positive feedback from the occupants of the home that they appreciated that as well. And Habitat saves money in the process. So pretty compelling case study all around. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. You know, I mentioned that in the early parts of the NEA pilot, we were focused on green builders, and the thought there was the part of the building community that would most be open to using advanced windows would be the green building community, and in general they were. What was really interesting is that as we started to talk with them, one, I would say that the level of knowledge in the green building community was not up to date. There was still a mindset that triple pane windows, when we talk specifically about that technology, not just Energy Star, but triple pane windows, thicker, heavier, more expensive, need two installers, you know, no thank you. So really the part of the building community that's typically most up to date on everything else, whether it's heat pumps, heat pump water heater, solar, heat recovery, you name it, when it came to building envelope and windows in particular, the level of knowledge, there was kind of a significant difference in where they were based. So I had a lot of discussions with them, of course, but it was interesting occurrence, and I will share this one. I won't share the name of the builder, But early on, we had a discussion with one builder open to using triple pane windows. And what we wanted to do in the pilot was not be prescriptive. We didn't want to create a corner condition where people could say, well, you know, NIA found one manufacturer that made one affordable window that worked well in this one particular application for this one green builder, and this is neither scalable, sustainable, or transferable to other builders. So what we did is we just said, what we want you to do is we want you to, you know, build a couple of homes with triple pane windows, and we're going to cover the incremental costs of doing that. And then we want to work with you and your installers, your energy rater. We want to learn about the experience and communicate it through a case study. So one of the early green builders that participated in this, without much guidance from NIA, went off and researched the triple pane window market. I'm not going to mention the brand that they purchased, but it's a very nice high-end brand of triple pane windows, very expensive, and came to the conclusion that that was apparently the only triple pane product that was available, cost prohibitive for them, for their clients, and then went on LinkedIn to announce that they would never use triple pane windows because relative to the incremental performance, the incremental cost was you know, way too high, didn't make sense, and they even used the word irresponsible to use, you know, triple pane windows in their homes. So this is a green builder. This is somebody who should really know quite a bit about the technology, and by comparison, we have, you know, Habitat for Humanity, who is off building low-income homes, who is learning quite a bit more about this and how to implement it effectively. Honestly, today, if I was going to be building a green home myself, and I have in the past, if I was going to do it again, I would probably reach out to Habitat for Humanity first, because I think they have a deeper level of knowledge just out of necessity about how to economically build high-performing homes, including ones with emerging technology like we're talking about today. So Grace, just want to mention, Grace won a 2023 Rising Star Award for the work that was done as part of that pilot program. You know, last thing I want to talk about, and as I transition here, you know, we could go on and on. I think there's an opportunity to participate with pause, and I think that's one of the calls to action is, I could talk for hours today about other opportunities, other case studies. All I really wanted to do with those two opportunities with Christine Williamson and with Grace to say there's an existing value proposition today for the product that the industry is making today. We don't need miracles of science or engineering to bring something to market that we don't yet have. We can use existing products to make a difference, and there's a lot of organizations out there that would be excited to work with the industry to make that happen, and there's a lot of federal funding to go along with it. For the window manufacturers that see that opportunity and go after it, and there are some, we worked with some at Pause that are very progressive. I've worked with some personally through NIA, but my personal opinion is that the bulk of the industry is somewhat resistant, and in some cases even obstructing, and that may create opportunities for disruptors, which I'll talk about in a second. But you know, maybe one last just summary on, you know, what could you do today if you wanted to get more involved in these opportunities. A couple things that come to mind that I didn't have in the slides, so I'll throw them out there since we have more time today. Utilities are very interested in technologies that provide opportunities for peak load reduction and demand response. So there's a massive effort to electrify the grid. We're going to heat pump water heaters. Everything's being electrified, and that puts a lot of extra load on the grid. So utilities are faced today with how do we reduce that, particularly during peak load times. So then one of the good things about windows is because of their impact on HVAC systems, they have the opportunity, and they are load shifting technologies. They add resilience to buildings, they reduce the demand for heating and cooling, and so they're one of the few technologies that really can help with peak load reduction operating in their normal mode. We don't have to, windows, no switch, right? We don't turn them up, we don't turn them down. They just do what they do, and they have an impact on the HVAC system. They're dual fuel opportunities, so when we're talking about gas utilities, it's an opportunity that gas utilities are interested in as well, because it helps reduce demand for gas consumption in winter. So you get both utilities that are interested. Demand response programs. A lot of how utilities are planning to address all of this extra load coming on the grid has to be built out. But until it does, one tool to address peak load is to have demand response, where Commercial organizations, homeowners sign up for programs where they're willing to let utilities turn off certain loads in their house at peak times for certain periods of time. Windows have a big opportunity here. When you have a leaky envelope, your ability to coast through a demand response event where your air conditioner is turned off or where electric heating is turned down is shortened. Better envelope lets you go for longer, and so there's a great demand response opportunity there. Second opportunity I want to talk about, a little less conventional, but this has come up at PAWS, and I think that this is worth exploring, and hopefully they are. Engagement with heat pump manufacturers. So we know through New York is a good example of this, NYSERDA. They're outputting heat pumps in all of their multifamily buildings. NYSERDA working with NYCHA, which is the New York Public Housing Group, outputting heat pumps in a lot of these buildings, eliminating their boiler systems. At the CE meeting that I referenced earlier, one of their representatives got up and said one of the challenges that they're running into is, particularly for some of these older buildings with leaky envelopes and old windows, they can't put a heat pump in. A heat pump cannot overcome leaky envelopes the way that a gas furnace or a boiler system can. Heat pumps are great, they're very efficient, but they produce heat a bit more slowly and take longer to recover when there's significant temperature changes. So they came out and said, well, we've got this heat pump readiness program. One of the things that they're doing is they're having to go into buildings. There's a certain cohort of buildings where they have to replace windows before they can effectively put a heat pump in and have tenants remain comfortable. So there's opportunities well outside of New York, cold climates particularly, but also areas where there's high solar heat gain and where there's heat pumps being installed more for air conditioning than for heating. But there's a segment of the market that isn't served well by heat pumps due to leaky envelope, and so potentially an opportunity for window manufacturing to work with heat pump manufacturers or installers to identify how can we expand the market for heat pumps by also expanding the market for efficient windows and replacing some of these single pane windows that are precluding the adoption of heat pump technology. I've talked about green builders, not going to go into that, but the last one I'll mention, Colorado and Minnesota. And Colorado may be the most controversial if the NFRC fall meeting is any indication. So Colorado recently, their legislature mandated that any new construction starting in 2025 must use Energy Star or version 7 windows. There's been a lot of pushback from the industry, either trying to get that legislation repealed or significantly modified. And there are some challenges with going with Energy Star version 7 across the board in Colorado. Solar heat gain comes up as one that needs to be addressed. I think my point with Colorado is you have a state who is trying to drive energy efficiency. They see an opportunity with windows, much like we just talked about. And what's peculiar that instead of the window industry saying, hey, this is great, we're going to be promoting our most efficient, arguably our more expensive and profitable products. However, there are some challenges, particularly around solar heat gain. Let's work together to figure out how to address those challenges without significantly rolling back the legislation. Instead of doing that, there's a significant and coordinated effort in Colorado to repeal that legislation, much of it being driven by the window industry itself, which is kind of a head scratcher. Up in Minnesota, efforts there to improve or reduce the U-value requirements for windows in new construction. I think the target in Minnesota is 0.28, going from 0.32 or 0.3, depending. A lot of resistance up there, also from certain segments of the window industry. A lot of it being, can't do this, expensive, difficult. 0.28 is code in Oregon. These products, and everybody on this call knows this, 0.28 is not a challenge for the window industry. No reason why Minnesota can't adopt 0.28 or lower. And the question is, why is the industry not taking the opportunity to participate in this, to promote better products for the sake of energy efficiency and find ways to work with Minnesota CE, work with other energy efficiency organizations to promote those technologies. So that's that's the editorial that's not in the slides on some of those opportunities. I'm happy to talk more about those. I really think the best point of contact, and on the last slide we'll have the contact for PAWS, is really to engage with PAWS, because they're doing all of this. So they have work groups that'll give you the opportunity to identify ways to engage in all of those activities. So my last point is who can participate, and what happens to those who don't. So a lot of innovation, but also a lot of disruption taking place potentially in the window industry. We see players who haven't historically played in certain segments of the market getting involved. This slide's been up here for a few minutes. PGTI partnering with Corning to build thin triple pane windows, specifically for serving the Northern Climate Zone, an Energy Star version 7 requirement. So PGT, primarily a dominant player in southern markets, now getting involved in northern markets, cold climate zones, and partnering with Corning, also obviously a relatively mature organization, well known, but newer to glass, innovative products, partnering, building a facility in Richmond, Virginia, and specifically to serve the northern climate zones. My point here, again, maybe a bit more controversial or provocative, is there's going to be winners and losers in this transformation, and the organizations that try to stick with the existing go-to-market strategies are the ones that are most likely to lose out in the long run. Kodak, I always like to talk about this in a number of cases. A lot of folks here, hopefully on the call, remember Kodak. Dominated in the film camera industry for a long time. You don't really hear much about Kodak. We've shifted to digital almost exclusively, except for a few kind of niche applications. What's interesting is that Kodak invented the digital camera sensor back in the 80s. And as they started to try to bring that to market, within the company, there were strong forces who were saying, no, this is disruptive to the way we do business today. Film is the future. We're cannibalizing our own sales, our own recurring revenue, and really suppressed adoption of the digital camera sensor. Innovation happens, and when innovation happens, people will figure out, organizations will figure out how to take advantage of it. If it's not the legacy companies, it's going to be somebody who's new and up and coming and can capitalize on the opportunity. So I believe there's an opportunity here. I know others do within triple. We didn't even talk about vacuum insulated glazing, which is another very interesting, less mature opportunity. The technology's there. It's market ready, certainly for triples. It's getting very close with VIG. This market's going to get transformed by somebody, and I think it's really just a matter of people deciding whether they're part of the transformation or they get left behind. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap it up and open it up to Q&A. I do want to emphasize I've shifted organizations. I'm not putting my personal contact information here. Would be happy to answer any specific questions, but in general, the place to go if you're interested in learning more, participating more actively, would be to reach out to the folks at PAWS, info@paws.energy, and carry on the conversation with them. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I think we can open it up to Q&A.
Hey, Rick, it's Tom. We did have one question from Lauren Sloan in the Q&A box.
Okay. Yeah, let me see if I can pull that up here.
I can read that if it's easier.
Yeah, there are a lot in there. I think about the connectivity issues there. So if you could zero in on that one for me, that would help.
So this one came up, I think it was during the Habitat for Humanity example. And the question is, was the cost equation compared to sprayed in foam insulation, or did that material not reach the net zero they were after? The installation cost of the spray foam insulation is significantly less than the rigid.
Yeah, my understanding is that spray foam would not have gotten them to the energy metric that they were trying to hit, and that they had to go to the rigid foam insulation for that. And I think, I'll see if I can find it. So that particular case study, Habitat for Humanity and Earth Advantage went into more detail. They presented at the Build Right conference, same conference that Christine Williamson presented at, and they presented this case study at the Build Right conference. So I'll see if I can dig that up, and if it goes into more detail about the other pathways that they looked at, and I can share that with you, and that could be distributed with any other materials that go out from the webinar.
Yeah, that's great, Rick. I'm sure folks will appreciate that. Any other questions from the attendees? Don't miss this rare and unique opportunity to tap into Rick's expertise. Feel free to type them into the Q&A box. You know, Rick, while we're waiting to see if there are any additional questions, one thing that stood out to me is the idea that there are a lot of opportunities to make a big difference using technology that already exists.
Correct. Yeah, as I mentioned before, the windows that, for example, that we used in the NIA case study, and then the subject of a lot of the work that PAWS is doing, those are available today. Another one of the misperceptions that I didn't go into detail about was the long lead times, that these products aren't available. We had no different lead time. In fact, when we asked Habitat for Humanity to go out and get bids on multiple types of windows, we said, don't just get the price quotes, but inquire about the lead times, and inquire about multiple brands. So they did that. And regardless of the brand that was selected, or the triple pane window that was selected, there was no difference in delivery times for their projects. This was all post-COVID. During COVID, and some of our work with the green builders did take place during COVID. There were long lead times for everything, and there were longer lead times for triple pane windows, just because they're kind of more of a niche product, or currently more of a niche product. But as we came out of that, and the Habitat construction was taking place a little over a year ago, no significant difference in lead times for that. NIA, if they haven't already, will be publishing another case study, this time with a national volume builder. I'm not going to reveal the name. I'm not sure if that's been released yet. It'd be very recognizable by everybody here. Same thing, there were no differences in lead times for the products that they went with, and I believe I can share the brand for those. Those were Milgard triple pane windows. So no miracles of science or engineering. This is really a matter of will. Are we willing to do things differently and find ways to engage? The product is out there. It performs. It's rated. It's in the NFRC database. The distributors, all the major distributors, provide those. We had no problems getting bids from all of the well-known, building supply distributors.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Rick. I'm not seeing any additional questions in our box, so I will just thank you for. Oh, please.
Can you please talk to the solar heat gain issue you mentioned in Colorado? Are triple pane not able to bring in enough solar heat gain in the winter?
No, I think, so there's the trade-offs for Energy Star version 7 for the northern climate zone. You've got the trade-offs. My understanding of the solar heat gain in Colorado is the other end of the spectrum, that for the lower U values, with the higher solar heat gain trade-offs, that it would present higher temperatures, particularly in the summer. So one obvious solution would be you can go to the lower U value, go to triple, go to lower solar heat gains. But there's trade-offs available that would allow some flexibility in how that gets implemented. And even if there's not enough flexibility within Energy Star version 7, the course of action there could be to not say don't repeal that legislation, but can we modify what the legislature mandated so that there may be increased flexibility beyond what version 7 allows for, so that we can optimize solar heat gain. Colorado is pretty interesting because you get very cold temperatures, but you also have very intense sun. So there's a lot of beneficial heating in the winter, but there's also with that a lot of non-beneficial heating in the summer. Whether you can get into how to tune these at different elevations, that's not addressed by version 7. Not always the easiest thing to do, but I think there's mechanisms by which to have conversations with the legislature and those who are promoting the adoption of that in Colorado to find solutions. At the NFRC fall meeting, Just as during the Q&A and the discussion period associated with this presentation, I think it was Raymond Roy got up and talked just briefly about, the industry has solutions to address some of the concerns that are articulated in Colorado. So again, even those solutions aren't requiring, new invention. It's just application of existing technology and new ways to allow it to be adopted effectively in Colorado.
Thank you. The next question is, can you speak to the potential or challenges of utilizing building energy codes and standards to push higher performance windows? For example, work done in the Washington and Seattle City Code.
I'm not the codes expert on that. That's somewhere where PAWS has a group, the codes and standards, that they could probably go into this in more detail. And if anybody's on the call that wants to jump in, feel free to. What I can say is this: while I was at NEA, talked with folks from Seattle specifically, well, in Oregon as well, from the codes division, and their question was pretty simple. Both contacts, both representatives, were interested in driving more aggressive codes for building envelope. I'm editorializing here now. I don't want to put words in people's mouth. My interpretation is there is a desire to drive codes to require more efficient windows in new construction. There's a lot of misinformation out there about the cost impact and the energy performance impact that would have, and the conclusion is that they are not cost effective, and all of these codes are going to be required to meet cost effectiveness thresholds. I reviewed the data. That was part of my job at NEA, and then provide feedback to some of these organizations. When I look at the information that goes into the cost equation and the energy savings equation, I think both are underestimating the potential value associated with those. For example, the costs, when you're looking at new construction, the incremental cost should really be the incremental cost of going from a 0.28, for example, to a 0.21 triple pane window. A lot of the costs I see get burdened with other things. Sometimes those things can be labor. I've seen equations where they included the labor component, and the labor component should be zero or almost zero, because putting in a triple pane window shouldn't be more expensive than putting in a double pane window. We saw that through the NEA pilot. In other cases, what you see is something a bit more nuanced and is a problem, which is depending on which window brand you're looking at when you go out to get that information about how much more does it cost for a more efficient window. In order to acquire that higher performing glass, you have to move up in product line within a manufacturer's portfolio. And so now what you're paying for is more expensive frames. Maybe you're going to fiberglass, more expensive hardware. The window component of that window is not substantially more expensive. It's everything that comes with it. So it's like wanting the GPS navigation system in your car, but to get it, you have to buy the technology package, which is $8,000. So getting GPS requires $8,000. It doesn't. It's a couple $100, but you have to buy this package. So when I looked at some of the data that gets analyzed on the cost effectiveness, it really needs to be broken out by what is exclusively the cost of the higher performing glass. So there's a desire, my sense, in talking with folks to advance codes, and I think you see this in Minnesota. But when they go out and contact the window industry in many cases about, what is the cost of these products, they get inflated numbers. And I don't know whether that's intentional or that's just practical, but that's, brand A is saying, if you want this window, it's going to come in this frame set, and this is what it's going to cost. But in terms of trying to do the cost-effective analysis, it presents a pretty big challenge and introduces information that's not really relevant to the analysis. So did that answer the question?
I believe so. I have a comment from Doug Anderson. High performance windows can help builders meet the requirements of the 45L tax credit, both for Energy Star certified homes and net zero homes. He also shared some information that I'm going to put in the chat now.
Yeah, there is a lot of funding available. I mean, the tax credits are one, but there's funding that goes not necessarily to the consumer, but to drive programs like what CE is doing, or to do demonstration pilots. So yeah, it's good point that this is not something that the wind industry has to do on their own, and it's not something that they have to foot the bill for on their own. There's a lot of funding out there to support better engagement.
That is all of the questions I see.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, apologies for the technology foibles, but we'll send out the slide, so hopefully that will make up for it a little bit.
We'll have this posted on the NFRC website so folks can get the information that way also. So thanks so much for being here, Rick. It really is compelling information, and we appreciate you spending some time with us to share your perspective.
Great. Okay. No, thanks for the invitation, and yeah, hope folks reach out to PAWS and learn about the ways to collaborate.
Well, have a great day, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Okay.